Another day, back working on the MX-5, not this one, the one that's inside. I've actually already started today, trying to figure out why my wipers and blower motor weren't working. I've actually traced it to the power going to all of the fuses on the wiper and blower motor, and it ended up being the connector that goes into the key ignition barrel basically. One of the pins, that switch 12 volt one, that goes to those fuses actually backed out a bit, and that ended up not putting power to those electrical components. Now it works again, so I'm off to do the next thing, which is the ignition coils. I've got some ignition coils here, which are Volkswagen small ignition coils, and I'll make a wiring harness for that, and here you go. This is a brief explanation on how I wire the coil harness. I've laid it out for you, so don't be scared. This is very easy to understand, you just have to take it step by step, because I've laid it out for you guys, it might be easier to explain. Each coil has 4 pins, these are Volkswagen Audi coils. The first important thing of the coil is that it gets power, so switch 12 volts is gonna be coming through into each coil with a red wire. This is a 1mm gauge wire. See, basically I have 5 different ones, all at a different length. The difference in length is the same as the cylinder spacing, which is for the Volvo engine 91mm, and they all splice together into one thicker, larger wire that's also red, and that will go to my interconnector. I basically have a 2-part wiring harness with a connector in between. You've seen this before, they're on my bulkhead, and I'm basically working from here to the ECU. So power comes through to all of the coils. They also need to be grounded, which this harness does. Is basically the exact same as the power harness, also spliced together all to all of the coils, which have a smaller wire of course. That's chassis ground. The chassis will be wired to the ground, so this is not going into my connector, this is actually going straight to the head with one of the ring terminals. Actually it's one of these, basically, like one of those round ring terminals, and that will be grounded to the head. And then the only thing the coils need to fire is the signal wire. So I've laid out a simple diagram for each coil. It has its own wire, so for instance coil 1 is the purple wire. Coil 1 is the longest, so you'll see that I have all of my wires here cut to length, and those will go straight from the coil to the intermediate connector right there. All of these wires will be isolated from each other, like see the bare joints, they'll be isolated using heat shrink. This is heat shrink with glue. Don't get the normal stuff, get the stuff with the glue because it won't move around in your car. And then they'll all run through the same snakeskin, which is this stuff. It's like a sheathing for over your wiring, and they'll be nice and neat. And on each end I'll also have some heat shrink to keep it from fraying out at the end. As you can see, this stuff likes to fray, so put a bit of heat shrink at the end. You'll see that when I start packing in. I'll do that before I put all of the connectors on. So the next step is to isolate them and put some heat shrink over this, and I'll do that right now. So that's the connections, all heat shrunk with the glue. As always, I don't use soldering because soldering is brittle and it'll break from the vibrations of the engine, and splices are just the way to go. So you might be saying, if I have power, ground and signal, I'm only using 3 out of 4, but these coils have a weird pinout where 2 of the first 2 are actually both ground. So I'll need to splice one end of the ground wire with 2 smaller or same size shorter pieces to actually connect both pins, and I'll splice those to each end right now. I have a pile of them right there. So those are all done, you can see they're all spliced together. Now I'm gonna put some heat shrink over all of those, and then we'll be able to combine it with the power wire right there, put it together, and put all of the signal wires in as well, and start making it one big thing. The The best trick I have for working with stuff like this and keeping it all easy to understand is keeping a tidy workspace. Every time you strip a piece of wire, just like this, just throw it away and keep your work surface clean. And now I've actually taped down my wiring harness, what I have so far, and you can see that we have the this side with the power and all of the signal wires, and one for the chassis ground, that's the coils grounded to the head. They'll get a ring terminal at the end, and this connector will be right here. On the other side we have all of the wires going to each of the coils. Remember, this is the back of the engine, so this is coil number 1, purple, like there, and it has its signal wire, 2 ground wires which are connected right there, and the red wire for this switch 12 volt. So I have all of my wires together, and then I'll go to actually putting the snakeskin on and putting the heat shrink on to seal that up, and then at the very end we'll put on the connectors and we'll have a finished wiring harness. Now with all the snakeskin on and the heat shrink mostly shrunk, especially the big one in the middle, I've taped it back down and put all of the boots on, because these connectors actually come with a boot that slots over right here. Now I have to crimp on the terminals with the terminal pliers, and we'll be able to connect the connectors up, put these sleeves over, and just put the Deutsch connector on, and then we're done. And then the lock for this connector, she slides in from the side, and you have to use a little something to push it all the way in. There we go, that's the first one done. And now I'll put the sheathing on and put this over, and we'll have our first coil connected. Just have to repeat that for the rest, and we'll have this side of the harness done. And there it is, my final harness. I have all of the connectors on with their rubber boots, and they're all nicely sealed. And on the other side I have the Deutsch connector, which goes to my other side of the harness, and the little 6mm eye for grounding it to the head. All of the coils are nice and neat. We can install this in the car right now. So these are the ignition coils that I have. They're Volkswagen NGK ignition coils. They're the shortest variant. They go onto the spark plug pretty well, and they sit very firm. So they don't really seal, but I have the covers of course, so that should be fine. And I've made a little wiring harness for that. This is the completed wiring harness that you saw me make. It has the 5 connectors, and it will click into the connector that I had here before, the big 8-pin Deutsch one, which only uses 7 I think, or 6 pins, but it should be fine. And then the ground that goes into the back of the head right there, and we'll get that on right now. It's not perfect, but it will do the job. I did make some slight mistakes with the harness in the back, with the length, but and I had to modify one of the bolts. Speeding parts tells me this coils will fit the Volvo 5-cylinder, which they do, but the connector will hit on one of the bolts. I know the bolts are different for some different heads. This is an S60 2.4 liter head, and I know that the earlier cars don't have all of the bolts in the same spot, just as the ventilation for the sump, so there might be this slight difference, so be wary when you're using these small Volkswagen coils. But so far they all fit. This one's kind of like locked in between, so I had to shave the bolt a bit for it to clear, because this connector is actually upside down compared to the normal vac coils. So I'm gonna put the covers on, and the next step is changing my oil filter housing. One of the scary things at the moment is that it takes, let's say, 10 to 15 seconds to build oil pressure after it's sat for a week. So I'm gonna shorten the length and probably change the position of the oil filter housing so that it's shorter, so it doesn't have to move all that oil to start making pressure. I do have a safety setup right now that the engine will only start if it's above half a bar of oil pressure, so it just keeps cranking and wouldn't even start the car before it has oil pressure. So that's why it sometimes starts a bit shit. It's just waiting for that oil pressure. So I'm trying to shorten that. This is what we're working with. See these long loops? I think these are too long and it's taking too much time to get the oil to the oil filter and back into the engine and then up and give me oil pressure. So I'm gonna undo these, see if I can bend this and move my oil filter and shorten these lines. That's it, I think. Easy as that. So now I'll shorten, see if I can get these lines better. Actually move you guys. This can be a lot shorter now. So this is a new AN line I made. I think this is probably the shortest AN10 line that I've ever made in my life, but that's a good thing here. So get it on started at the block, and this one goes to the lower, which means I should be able to hopefully get this into place. Give me a sec. So there you can see from the top, and here from the bottom. This is the new line setup basically. It's way shorter. I actually ended up removing about this much on one side and this one on the other, so that's about, say, 40 to 50 centimeters, and it's now a total of maybe, I think, 20 centimeters in total. So that's like maybe a third of what it used to be, and it's really serviceable, and I can put my thermostated housing for the cooler, for the oil cooler as well in there. So I'll refill the oil and check all the other fluids, clean up my stuff, and we'll go for a drive. Oil pressure is 4,5 bar. Intake 10. Ja toch? Hij is alleen ergens lek. Hola. Blijft gestoord de ding. So I'm gonna connect up my audio knock detection by Fowler tuning to my headset, and one day I'll try to give you guys an idea of how this sounds going to the camera. Ja. analog and get my VE table fixed. Jezus Christus. Raket. Okay, time for some context. This was after dinner. We looked over the car, and as you do, you take your next friend for a drive. So for this drive, I actually set up two mics, one on the rear bumper and one under the hood, like I've done before, to get some really cool audio. Looking back at this footage, I can actually hear a little chirping noise every time I press in the clutch. At the time I couldn't hear this in the car, there was so much going on. The current theory is that it's the BMW plastic clutch release bearing that's actually pressing onto the Volvo pressure plate, and that might have died after this. You'll see at the end a bunch of smoke coming past the car when we drove it in, and it smelled like burnt plastic. So that's the current theory. In the next video we'll actually go and have a look at it, but for now this is the drive that we did, and I'll just let you guys enjoy the audio. It speaks for itself. Right around here is where I started to notice the noise. It got slightly louder, so I pulled back in. Luckily we were just around the corner of the garage, so I pulled back in and I could still hear the noise, and I started to figure out that it was when I was pushing in the clutch, so I shut off the car and we pushed it in later. So after that drive we had some issues. We had a bunch of smoke coming out from about here. From about there we had a bunch of smoke come out. And also a chirping sound from when I pushed the clutch in. That might be able to, you might have been able to hear that. And it smells a lot like burnt plastic right now. We jacked up the car and looked underneath. Saw one connector, the tie wrap that was holding the connector on, melted away, but that can't be all of the smell and the smoke we saw. Has to be, we're thinking pilot bearing probably, clutch pilot bearing. So that's kind of shit. We'll continue next time and get the drive shaft issue sorted and see if the clutch is gone or the pilot bearing or whatever. And yeah, the story continues. I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.